Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this video we're going to be making some shaper fixturing, and I call it fixturing because that's my language that I use for any kind of work holding on any machine, and that's come from my industrial experience. So this is for non-vice jobs on the shaper, so where you don't need the vice, which hopefully is most of the time, because far better to just come straight off the table than it is to be using a vice. It basically consists of a series of fences, and a series of fences that are adaptable, meaning you can position them in different ways on the table surface, making them, adaptable, making them modular, whatever kind of language you want to use. And it's going to contain some shaper action, and who doesn't like a bit of shaper action? I know I certainly do. After all the effort gone into the refurb, there is nothing more satisfying than switching that thing on and watching it work. So looking forward to doing that, and I think that's it for the board. So without any more waffling, we'll move over to the shaper and we'll get stuck right into it. Okay, we're at the shaper. So we've done some preparatory work, and I've got some stock cut, and this is some ex-aerospace fixturing, would you believe? So this has been cut out of some old fixtures. This will be a drop of good material. I don't know what grade it will be, but it certainly won't be bog standard mild steel. It's obviously carbon steel of some description because we've got rust on it. So effectively we're talking about two rails, one to go this way onto the table and one to go this way onto the table, and for them both to be able to go onto the table at the same time, and also for this rail to go this way as well. So totally modular, where you can put the rails, and then a couple of extra bits for some clamps that will be able to screw into the top of the rails for holding work down to the surface of the table. That's just an idea for now. I've got nothing drawn up for that, nothing planned. We'll be going as we go. Basically I've taken two basic measurements so far off the table surface to get me the lengths I needed for these, and the width and the thickness is just the stock that I've got, and it will end up whatever it ends up after we've cleaned it all up. So I will get these deburred, and we'll get the first one loaded up in the vise, and we'll crack on with it. Okay, we've got our first piece, the long one, loaded in the vise. I've got a copper wire on the moving jaw, and what I want to do is make sure these are really square, and that's why I'm not doing these as a gang. I'm not doing multiple ones. I'm going to do them one at a time, so I know we've got them squared up. And so we've nipped up. We've used our torque wrench for nipping because I'm in the top part of the vise. If you've not watched my video on all vices are made of rubber, go back and look at that, and that will explain all about why we're using a torque wrench. So I've set my stroke length, I've got everything right, so we're just going to move in now, touch on this top surface, and then we'll put our first cut on. This is a bandsaw cut, so we need to clean this up with a roughing tool. Almost there. Okay, I've done the same operation on the short piece, just got rid of the saw cut surface. So we're now going to move on to squaring this up properly now to that surface that I've just machined. So we're going to pop the first one in, and we're going to use the copper wire again in the moving jaw to make sure that we take any out of squareness out of play. Just give that a quick tap onto the fixed jaw, and we're going to use our torque wrench we put our shear tool in. So we're now just going to get set up for putting a nice finish on the first edge, and that will get us two edges square to one another, and then we'll just continue on around the part. Then we'll remove the copper wire at that point, and we can finish this square on all four sides. Beautiful finish. A little bit not cleaned up on each end, so I'll just go over that again and bring you back when we're on to the next bit. So there's our face you just watched me do. Now I know that this face is now square to this first face that we did, the saw cut face. So what we're going to do now is use that face again against the fixed jaw. We're going to sit this face that we've just done down on the parallels, and we're going to machine the opposite face, which is this one, which should machine this both square to that face and also parallel to this underside face. So this is where we find out if all the work I've done on the shaper and on the vise it's been worth it. So this is the full, pretty much the full length of travel, the full 7 inches just under of stroke. So we're just going to check our parallelism. So we're reading 14.79 at that end. About 14.795 at that end. So we've got 5 microns taper over almost 7 inches. I could not be happier than I am with that. That is perfect. So I'm going to whip this one out, put the short one in, bring it to the same standard. What I'm doing off camera is just mimicking the operations on the short one each time, and then we'll come back and we'll machine the final face down to size and we'll make them both exactly the same. Okay, that's got both our long and short ones complete to the same sizes. So the next question is, can you chamfer on a shaper? Now I'm quite sure I could single point chamfer by cocking the tool slide over at 45 degrees and winding in that way, but that's very long-winded. What I want to know is, can I form a chamfer? So I've just created myself a two-sided chamfering tool, roughly 45 degrees on each side, just measured roughly with a protractor. So we're going to get that loaded up into here. I suspect I'm going to get chatter, but we'll give it a try and see how we get on. The theory was good, the practice not so good. I've got my tool in the wrong vertical alignment. I'm just going to reset that and I'll bring you back. Well, there we go, guys. I think I've got to say the shaper has just become my new favourite chamfering machine. That just makes life so quick and easy. It literally taken me a couple of minutes to chamfer that up just by running it down, indexing all the way around. Super. On with the next bit. Okay, on to the next stop, which is the holes for the clamping screws. So I've just made myself a little adapter up, and I've got my drill, so we're just going to slot that in through here, and I think that should just about work. We'll attach our DeWalt to the back of there, and who says you can't drill holes on a shaper? Clearly I'm joking. I think I've reached the limit of this machine's capability on this job, so with all of that hilarity out of the way, we will retire to the milling machine to finish these two off. Okay, we've got our two rails completed with all of our holes drilled and tapped where needed, and drilled and countersunk. So we're now moving on to the two clamps that we're going to make out of the same stock. I'm going to go with two for a start because I don't know quite how these are going to work out. If these fit well and work well, we'll make some more of these. So we've got both bits of stock in the vise at the same time for these, because I'm not too fussed about these being dead square or anything like that, so we can pair these up as we go. Got my roughing tool back in, we've touched on the top, I've set my stroke length and everything to be around the centre of the vise. So we've put a 20 thou depth of cut on, we're going to have 10 thou step over, so here we go. Okay, we've put our shear tool in, so we've cleaned our saw cut edges up there. We've put our shear tool in now, we'll use that for the rest of these blocks to finish them off. So we've wound on a 3 thou cut, we've touched on the surface, and I've decreased my step over to 5 thou. So we're all good to go. Bit of magic juice on there, and off we go. So next job, we've just got a parallel in here sat on top of the part, and we've got our digital angle gauge, and we're heading for 25 degrees, which is as close as I'm going to get it, I think. So we'll get the vice nipped up at that and start putting the next features on at the front of the clamp. Okay, we've got our clamps complete on the shaper, and what we're going to do now is put an 8mm slot in the clamp clearance for some 8mm studding or cap screws. So I've centred up, I've touched on my edge, I know where I am, I've got my DOO set and I've got my vice stop set, so I can do one, whip it out, pop the next one in and rinse and repeat. So we're going to do that now. Rinse and repeat. Okay, we've got our fixturing completed, so we've got our two clamps. Like I said, I might make some more of those. So what I've done here is I've got my two rails on the table, as you can see, and these clamps can either be used from the rails or from regular T-nuts in the table. So everything's on M8, so it's all modular. So what I've done there, you'll see I've put the tapped holes for the clamps right next to the hold down bolts to minimise any risk of lifting the rails. And then I've got the two rails that can be used together like this, you know, clock one in, clock the other one in, whatever, or just clock one in and use this as a bump stop. This is intended to be used with a clamp across the table, clamping up against this rail, and all of this is from watching Rusty at Rustinox with his fixturing. So I've basically seen what he's got and largely copied it. I've also got threaded holes in the side here, again M8, so that I can screw studding through here and influence if I've got a part that's slightly out of square that I want to put up against this rail. I've got some opportunity to influence it with, I've got two holes through this one and two holes through this one at the front. And then the final bit of, I guess if you want to call it, modularity about this is I can put this rail in this side or in the centre slot, and also I've made the gaps on the hold down holes here on this one the right pitch so that I could spin this round, and I could use this one on the front this way, so the T-slots all line up that way. So I've made that as modular as I can. Obviously it's all had the John's Workshop trademark chemical black treatment, and I've now got my shaper table fixturing ready for use. And what I've also got that's come in that needs some refurbishment, and that will probably be in another video, is a carver clamp, which I'm going to be using for clamping across, clamping up to whatever on these rails, so that you'll see that in a future video. So I've really enjoyed making those. You know, I could have made all of that on the mill, but why? You know, I've got the shaper now, and I've learnt some more about the machine. I've had it in faster speeds running. I've learnt a lot about my parallelism that I'm now achieving through the vise, which is really good after all the work we've done. So yeah, really enjoyed making these. The clamps, you know, I could have milled some of these angled features on the front probably quicker in the milling machine than pecking away at them on the shaper, but again, enjoyed it. Just another way of machining some basic fixturing using the shaper instead of the milling machine. So with all that being done and said, I will join you at the board and we'll wrap this episode up. Well, there we go guys, that gets us to the end of this video, and that's got me some more tooling now for the shaper, which I'm pleased about and looking forward to using. So as I said just now, really enjoyed making those. You can't beat a bit of shaper action, and I know there's quite a few of you enjoy that, so hopefully you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I've enjoyed making it. So really pleased with that fixturing. So thank you all to the viewers and subscribers, and to the new subscribers that have come along, and we'll catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.